I should probably start by saying that my name is Jake, and what I'm about to share is a wild ride. My wife Sarah and I had been married for almost 6 years. We were high school sweethearts, and for the most part, I thought we had a solid relationship. Sure, there were bumps along the way, like the occasional disagreement over household chores or her tendency to leave the lights on. But overall, I believed we were good together. We had a comfortable home, mutual friends, and even talked about starting a family. That was until everything went to hell. Things began to feel off about 6 months ago. I noticed little things at first. Sarah became more distant, often glued to her phone. She was frequently too busy to engage in our usual rituals, like cooking dinner together or binge-watching our favorite show. I brushed it off as stress from work. She was in marketing and the projects had ramped up. I wanted to be supportive, so I let it slide. But the more I noticed, the more I began to feel like I was living with a stranger. One Tuesday evening, I came home late from work. It was around 7, and as I walked through the door, I noticed the smell of something delicious wafting through the house. I thought, wow, she must have planned something special. I called out to her, but there was no answer. When I stepped into the living room, I saw her phone on the coffee table. The screen lit up with a text message from an unknown number. I picked it up to see what was happening. I shouldn't have, but curiosity got the better of me. The message read, "Can't wait to see you tonight. I'll be thinking about you." My heart sank. I felt like I was punched in the gut. Was this really happening? The signs were there, but I didn't want to believe it. I dropped the phone and it landed next to a half-eaten pizza on the coffee table. I was frozen, overwhelmed with a mix of anger and heartbreak. Just then, Sarah walked in and I was hit with the whirlwind of emotions. She looked startled to see me there. "Hey babe, I thought you were working late," she asked, her voice too cheerful given the circumstances. "Yeah, I was, but—" "Then I found your phone," I replied, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. I wanted to scream, to cry, to throw something, but I held my ground. Her face went pale, and for a second I thought I saw fear in her eyes. "Oh, that's just someone from work. You know how hectic things have been," she stammered, her usual confidence wavering. "Really? Because it sounds like more than just work to me," I shot back. She tried to play it off, throwing in a few half-hearted excuses, but I could see through her lies. The panic in her eyes told me everything. I pressed her for details. I demanded to know what was going on. Her initial surprise turned to defensiveness, and she started to twist her words. "You're overreacting, Jake. It's just a friend. You know how I get with work stress." But something was off. I could feel it in my bones. Her demeanor, her words, they didn't match the situation. I felt like I was peeling back layers of deceit, and every layer I uncovered made the anger inside me boil over. I confronted her again, and this time the facade crumbled. The tears flowed, but they were not for remorse, they were for herself. "I didn't mean to fall for him, Jake. He just gets me, you know." A struggling author, a wannabe, really was the one who swept her off her feet. It was infuriating. How could she throw away everything we built together for someone without any real future? I felt a mix of rage and sorrow. How could she say that? After everything we'd been through, I felt like a fool. I'd trusted her implicitly, and she'd thrown it back in my face. In that moment, I knew I had a choice to make. I could either scream and shout or find a way to channel my pain into something productive. And that's when the idea struck me. If she wanted to live an exciting life filled with intrigue and passion, I would show her what it's like to be successful. I would write my own success story, with or without her. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of my journey. A journey of betrayal, creativity, and ultimately revenge. The confrontation with Sarah left me feeling hollow. The world I thought we had built together was crumbling, and I was standing in the wreckage, trying to piece together what had happened. I spent the following days in a state of disbelief, oscillating between anger and sadness. I couldn't concentrate at work, and my friends noticed something was off. I brushed off their concern with vague excuses about stress and workload. I didn't want to drag anyone else into my mess just yet. Every time I saw Sarah, my blood boiled. She pretended everything was normal, trying to act like nothing had happened. I saw her texting on her phone, her face lighting up when a message would come through. It was infuriating. I felt like a ghost in my own home, like I was just waiting for the inevitable blow to come. What made it worse was that deep down, I still loved her. I couldn't shake that feeling, even if my heart was being stomped on. About a week later, I was sitting at my desk, staring blankly at my computer screen, when an idea floated into my mind. I had always wanted to write. I loved stories and had even dabbled in writing short stories during college. It was a passion I had shelved as life got busy. But now I thought maybe this was my chance to channel my heartbreak into something creative and powerful. I decided to write a novel, a story about betrayal, love, and revenge. It would be my catharsis, a way to wrestle back control of my narrative. I envisioned a man who finds out his wife is cheating on him and turns his pain into a literary success. It felt ambitious and ridiculous all at once, but it was the first step toward reclaiming my life. After work, I would stay up late, pouring my heart into a keyboard. I wrote for hours, crafting characters that mirrored the confusion and anger I felt. My protagonist was just like me, a struggling husband, a woman who had strayed, and the complexities that made love so fragile. I spent countless nights building the world of my story, and with each word I felt a sense of purpose return. As I wrote, Sarah's behavior became more pronounced. She started leaving the house more often, and I suspected she was meeting up with that author she had mentioned. Each time she left, I felt a strange mix of relief and rage. Relief that I could have the house to myself to write, but rage that she was still out there betraying me. It was like a sick game where I was the unwilling participant. I'd overhear her on the phone, laughing and gushing about her friend. I wanted to confront her again, to throw the truth in her face, but I held back. Instead, I turned up the volume on my music and kept writing. I was building my own success story while she was busy writing her own fantasy with someone else. The turning point came when I hit a particularly rich vein of inspiration one night. I had just finished a chapter that described a man's emotional descent after discovering his wife's infidelity. I didn't realize it then, but those words would resonate with readers more than I ever imagined. I was channeling my pain into something beautiful, and it felt liberating. I found solace in my writing, and my world started to brighten. Weeks passed, and I was finally ready to take the next step. I finished my first draft and sent it off to a few beta readers, friends who had always encouraged my writing. I was nervous but excited to hear what they thought. Their feedback was overwhelmingly positive, and it ignited a fire within me. If I could turn my pain into art, who knows what else I could achieve? But Sarah was still in the picture, and she had no idea what I was plotting. I had decided that I wanted to show her my success, to make her regret her decisions. It wasn't just about the book. It was about reclaiming my life and proving that I could thrive without her. I started researching publishing options, preparing to launch my literary career while she was busy writing her own downfall. With each passing day, I became more determined. I didn't just want to be successful. I wanted to be better than the man she cheated on. I was fueled by a mix of anger and hope, and I couldn't wait to see where this new path would lead me. As I sat down to write the next chapter of my story, I realized that this wasn't just a tale of revenge. It was a story of transformation. I was no longer the man who would accept betrayal quietly. I was becoming someone new, someone ready to take charge of his own destiny. I was ready to show the world what I was made of. As my writing journey continued, I felt a shift in my mindset. I began to embrace the anger and hurt as fuel for creativity rather than allowing it to paralyze me. Each morning, I would wake up early, brew a pot of coffee, and pour my heart into the keyboard. The story was taking shape, and with every word I felt stronger. I had also decided to fully commit to my pursuit of publishing. I researched literary agents, scoured online forums, and reached out to writers' groups. I was ready to take my novel out into the world, ready to show everyone, especially Sarah, that I was capable of achieving great things. One day, while I was deep into the editing process, Sarah walked into the living room. She looked different, her hair was styled, and she wore a dress that I hadn't seen before. She had clearly been out, and I wondered for a moment if it was with him. "Oh wow, Jake, you're really getting serious about this writing thing," she said, attempting to sound supportive. Yeah, I think I might actually get it published, I replied, fighting the urge to reveal how much I had poured into it. Instead, I kept my tone casual. I've sent it out to a few agents. Her expression shifted to one of mild surprise. That's great. I mean, I guess that could be fun, she said, trying to feign interest. The disingenuousness of her response made my skin crawl. I wanted to scream at her for not truly caring, but instead I bit my tongue. I was no longer the man who would let her hurt me. Over the next few weeks, tension filled our home. Sarah kept her secret life close to her chest, and I kept mine as well. I was preparing to send my manuscript to an agent who had shown interest, a reputable one who'd had past successes. The thought of it sent waves of excitement through me. I could already picture the cover of my book, my name in bold letters, the accolades, and the recognition. In the evenings, while she was out, I found myself lost in my writing, narrowly focused on crafting a compelling story. I was channeling everything, my anger, my sorrow, my desire for revenge, into every sentence, every character arc. The protagonist in my book began to take on a life of his own, and in many ways he mirrored my journey. I crafted a new life for him, one filled with success, adventure, and ultimately healing. But it wasn't just about the writing anymore. I had started to make small changes in my life. I joined a local writers' workshop, met with other aspiring authors, and began networking. I realized that sharing my story could be therapeutic, and it was also a way to draw strength from others who had faced similar situations. I needed to connect with people who understood the pain and complexity of relationships. One evening, after a particularly productive session at my workshop, I returned home to find Sarah sitting on the couch, looking anxious. "We need to talk," she said, her voice trembling slightly. My heart raced, but I kept my composure. "About what?" I asked, feigning ignorance while the adrenaline surged through me. "I've been seeing someone," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know," I replied, feeling a sense of calm wash over me. I had expected her to come clean, but it still felt surreal to hear it spoken aloud. "I saw your texts. I confronted you before, remember?" Her eyes widened and she immediately shifted into defensive mode. "It's not what it seems, Jake. You don't understand." "Don't understand what?" "That you fell in love with some struggling author while I was pouring my heart into this marriage." I snapped back, pointing at my laptop where the manuscript lay open. "You think I wouldn't notice? You have no idea how much I've seen you change." She opened her mouth to protest, but I didn't want to hear any more of her excuses. I needed to get my point across. "You've destroyed what we had, Sarah. You chose to betray me, and now you want to act like everything can go back to normal. It doesn't work that way." Her mask of confidence faltered, and I could see the cracks showing. "Please, Jake, I never meant to hurt you. You just wanted something exciting, right? Something new." I interjected. "Well, here's the reality. I'm going to be successful, and I'm going to make a life for myself that you can't even imagine. I'm done playing second fiddle to your whims." The words hung in the air like a thunderstorm. I could see her processing what I said, the realization dawning on her that I wasn't just a passive participant anymore. I was claiming my narrative back. "Jake," she began, but I cut her off again. "I can't go back to what we had. I'm moving forward, and you can either join me in that or watch from the sidelines." I turned and walked away, leaving her sitting there, stunned. I felt a mix of triumph and sadness, but I was ready to move on. I was no longer the man who would wallow in betrayal. I had a story to tell, a life to build, and this was just the beginning. As I sat back down at my desk, fingers hovering over the keyboard, I felt more determined than ever. My life was unfolding right before me, and I was going to write it the way I wanted. The days following that confrontation felt surreal. I could almost taste the freedom, but there was still a heaviness in the air, a reminder of what had been lost. Sarah and I were coexisting in a strange limbo, the silence between us now punctuated by the echoes of our past. I spent my time writing, diving deeper into the world I had created. In some ways, it felt like I was escaping the reality of my life, a life that had turned upside down in a matter of weeks. I continued to share my progress with the writers' group. They were supportive, and their enthusiasm for my story fueled my motivation. As I navigated through the emotional landscape of my novel, I found pieces of myself that had been buried under the weight of the betrayal. I was reclaiming my identity, and it felt exhilarating. One evening, as I was working on a particularly intense chapter, I received an email from the literary agent I had submitted my manuscript to. My heart raced as I opened it. "Dear Jake, thank you for your submission." My eyes scanned the words eagerly until I hit the part that made my breath catch. "We would like to offer you representation." I read it again, my mind struggling to process the enormity of the moment. I was stunned. This was the opportunity I had dreamt about for years, and it was finally happening. I felt the adrenaline rush through me, and for a brief moment the pain of Sarah's betrayal faded into the background. I immediately called my best friend Mark to share the news. "Dude, you're never going to believe this. I got an agent. They want to represent my book." "Are you kidding me? That's amazing. You've been working your ass off for this, man. Let's celebrate." He replied, his excitement echoing mine. We met at a local bar that night, and as we toasted to my newfound success, I felt a sense of triumph building inside me. I had taken the pain of my situation and transformed it into something powerful. I was no longer just a victim. I was becoming a force to be reckoned with. Meanwhile, Sarah was still trying to navigate her guilt. She made half-hearted attempts to engage me in conversation, but I was no longer interested in discussing our fractured relationship. I had moved on, and she could sense the shift. Each interaction felt charged with an unspoken tension, and I could see the confusion in her eyes. Then came a turning point that I hadn't anticipated. One day, as I returned home after a meeting with my agent, I found Sarah sitting on the couch, a look of desperation painted across her face. "Jake, can we talk?" she asked, her voice trembling. I hesitated, but I nodded. "What is it?" "I've been thinking about everything," she said, her eyes welling with tears. "I know I messed up. I was selfish, and I took you for granted. I never stopped loving you, Jake." Her words hung in the air, heavy with regret. I felt a wave of conflicting emotions crash over me. Part of me wanted to believe her, to let her back in, but another part knew that I had moved forward without her. "Sarah, you made your choice," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "You chose excitement over us. But I realize now that it was a mistake. I thought I wanted something more, but it turns out I just wanted the comfort of what we had," she pleaded. "I want to work on things. I want to fix this." Her desperation was palpable, and for a split second I felt a flicker of hope, but then the anger surged back. "You can't just decide to come back when it suits you, Sarah. I've been building my life without you. I'm not the same person I was when you cheated." She looked crushed, and I could see the tears streaming down her cheeks. "I never wanted to hurt you, Jake. I didn't know what I was doing," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. In that moment I saw glimpses of the woman I once loved, the one who stood by my side through thick and thin. But that was the past, and I was no longer willing to sacrifice my future for the mistakes of the past. "I need time, Sarah. I'm not ready to forgive you, and I don't know if I ever will be," I told her, my heart aching for the pain I was causing her, but I knew it was necessary. As she walked away, I felt a mix of sadness and resolve. I couldn't let her back into my life so easily. I had learned too much about myself in those months of writing and self-discovery. I was on a path to success, and I would not derail my progress for someone who had once betrayed me. As I returned to my laptop that night, I channeled my emotions into the story. The protagonist faced similar dilemmas, torn between the love he still held and the need to protect himself from further pain. It was cathartic, and I found solace in the process. I was more determined than ever to push through the final edits of my manuscript. I didn't just want my story to be published. I wanted it to resonate with people who had faced similar heartbreak. I wanted to show them that it was possible to rise from the ashes, to reclaim one's life, and to find strength in vulnerability. The deeper I delved into my writing, the more I felt like the main character in my own story. I was evolving, no longer defined by betrayal, but rather by my resilience and creativity. I was ready for whatever came next, whether it was success in publishing or the rebuilding of my personal life. The future was mine to shape, and I would not let anyone dictate the terms anymore. The clock ticked on, and I typed. with fervor, each keystroke an affirmation of my new reality. I was not just writing a novel, I was crafting the narrative of my life. As I dove headfirst into the final stages of editing my manuscript, there was a noticeable shift in my life. The pain of betrayal was still there, but it was evolving into something more manageable, a source of motivation rather than despair. I was writing with a newfound clarity, pouring everything I had into my story. Each chapter felt like a cathartic release, a way to process my emotions and fears. With my agent's guidance, I began preparing for the possibility of publication. We discussed marketing strategies and my author platform. I had spent weeks networking and connecting with other writers, and now it was time to amplify my presence. I created a social media profile dedicated to my writing journey, sharing snippets from my manuscript and insights about the writing process. The response was overwhelming. People loved the raw honesty of my journey. But as my profile began to grow, so did the tension at home. Sarah continued to express her desire to reconcile, but I could see that her attempts were more about her feelings than about the reality of our relationship. She wanted to be part of my success, but I was wary. One evening, as I returned from a local book fair where I had networked with fellow authors, Sarah was waiting for me. "Jake, can we talk about us?" she asked, her voice shaky, but there was a fire in her eyes that I hadn't seen in a while. I let out a deep sigh, knowing this conversation was inevitable. "What's there to talk about, Sarah? You've made your choice." "I know, but I can't help but feel like we could still make this work. I've been thinking about it a lot," she said, her eyes pleading. "I want to support you, to be there for you. Support me or support yourself." I replied, my anger flaring up. "You think you can just waltz back into my life because I'm about to be successful? That's not how this works." She looked hurt, but I was done being gentle. "I've spent months building my life without you. I've learned to rely on myself, and I won't go back to the way things were. Jake, I'm not asking you to go back," she insisted. "I just want another chance. I miss you. I miss us." I shook my head, feeling a mix of sadness and resolve. "I can't just forget what you did. I'm working hard to become someone new, and I don't want to drag the past along with me." Her face crumpled, but I held my ground. "I've come too far. I'm writing my own story now, and it doesn't include you." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, tears streaming down her cheeks. It was painful to see her like that, but I needed to prioritize my own growth. No more second chances, no more bending to her will. That night, I poured every ounce of emotion from our conversation into my writing. The protagonist faced a pivotal moment, a decision to step out of the shadows of his past and embrace the future. As I wrote, I felt a sense of empowerment washing over me. This was my story, my narrative, and I had the power to shape it. As I neared the final edits of my manuscript, I received an email from my agent. That sent my heart racing. "Jake, I have some exciting news. I've submitted your manuscript to several publishers, and we received interest from a major publishing house. Expect to hear back soon." My hands trembled with excitement as I read and reread the words. This was it. After all the hard work, after everything I had endured, I was on the verge of making my dream a reality. I quickly called Mark to share the news. "I can't believe it. Major interest, man. I might actually get published." We celebrated over drinks, and it felt as though the universe was finally aligning in my favor. I was no longer just the man who had been cheated on. I was an author poised for success. The bittersweet feeling of having Sarah still in my life lingered, but I was determined to navigate the waters of my newfound identity. Weeks passed, and the excitement of potential publication kept me fueled. But the reality of my relationship with Sarah still loomed over me. She continued to reach out, attempting to engage in conversations about our past, but I remained firm. The more I distanced myself, the clearer it became that I had made the right choice. Then came the moment that would change everything. I received a phone call from my agent, and the moment I heard her voice, I knew it was big. "Jake, we've signed a deal. Your book is going to be published." I felt an explosion of joy. It was a culmination of my hard work and dedication, but it also felt like a shattering of the chains that had held me back for so long. I was ready to embrace this new chapter, not just in my writing career, but in my life. When I returned home that evening, I was practically glowing. Sarah was sitting on the couch and I couldn't help but smile as I entered the room. "I have some news," I said, unable to contain my excitement. She looked up, her expression a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "What is it?" "I'm being published. My book is officially going to print." For a moment her face lit up with genuine happiness. "Jake, that's incredible. I always knew you could do it." But as quickly as her smile appeared, I could see the shadow of regret. "But you can't just come back into my life and claim to be proud of me. This success is mine and I earned it on my own." Her smile faltered and she nodded, the weight of her actions heavy in the air. "I know, I'm happy for you, really I am." I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of finality wash over me. "I hope you find happiness too, but I can't be part of that anymore. I need to focus on my future." With that, I turned and walked into my study, closing the door behind me. As I sat down at my desk, I felt a new kind of freedom. I was ready to embrace my success, ready to step into the spotlight. The pain from my past was still part of me, but it no longer defined me. I was moving forward, and I couldn't wait to see where this new path would lead. In that moment, I realized I had finally written my own story. As the days turned into weeks, the excitement of my impending book launch began to overshadow the shadows of my past. I poured myself into the final preparations for the release, attending promotional events and interviews, feeling like a new man. The thrill of sharing my story, a story born from betrayal but transformed into hope, was exhilarating. On the day of the launch, I stood in front of a crowd of supportive friends, family, and fellow writers. I felt a mix of nerves and excitement as I faced them. The room was filled with eager faces ready to celebrate my journey. As I spoke about my book, I shared the challenges I had faced, the emotions I navigated, and the catharsis that followed. I made no mention of Sarah. My focus was solely on the triumph of my journey. As I signed copies of my book, I could see the admiration in the eyes of my readers. They resonated with the themes of love, betrayal, and ultimately, redemption. The book was not just a reflection of my pain. It was a testament to resilience and the human spirit. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive, and I felt a sense of validation that I had not anticipated. But even amidst the celebration, Sarah lingered in the background. She had attended the launch, her presence a reminder of the life I was gradually leaving behind. I spotted her standing off to the side, her eyes reflecting a mix of sadness and nostalgia. I could tell she was grappling with the consequences of her actions. After the event, she approached me hesitantly. "Congratulations, Jake. You deserve this," she said, her voice soft but sincere. "Thanks, Sarah," I responded, my heart a mix of emotions. "This achievement is what I've been working toward, and honestly, it feels liberating. I know I messed up. I wish I could take it back," she said, her honesty cut through the celebratory atmosphere. "I've been reflecting a lot. I've realized how much I took you for granted, and I'm truly sorry." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of our history. "I appreciate your apology, but I can't go back to what we had. I've changed, and I'm proud of who I've become." "I understand," she replied, her eyes glistening with tears. "I just want you to know that I'll always care about you. And I'll always care about you too, but it's time for both of us to move on," I said gently. I felt a sense of closure as the words left my mouth. We stood there in silence for a moment, absorbing the reality of our circumstances. It was bittersweet, but I knew it was necessary. As the night wore on, I celebrated with friends and family who had supported me throughout this journey. I felt buoyed by their love and encouragement, which reminded me that I was not alone. I was stepping into a new chapter of my life, one that held the promise of new opportunities and experiences. In the weeks following the launch, my book began to gain traction. I received invitations to speak at various events, and my social media presence exploded with readers sharing their thoughts and experiences related to my story. I felt a sense of connection with people from all walks of life who had faced their own battles. It was empowering to know that my story resonated with others, and I found joy in the community I was building. As for Sarah, we eventually reached a point of mutual understanding. We agreed to maintain distance, allowing ourselves to heal independently. I wished her well, and though we didn't speak often, I hoped she would find her own path to happiness. Reflecting on everything I had been through, I realized that the pain of betrayal had ultimately led me to discover my true self. I had transformed my hurt into art, and in doing so, I had forged a new identity. I was no longer defined by my past. I was thriving, and there was no turning back. In the end, my journey taught me invaluable lessons about love, loss, and the strength of resilience. I had taken the worst moments of my life and turned them into something beautiful. My book was not just a narrative. It was a symbol of survival and triumph over adversity. As I settled into my new life, I felt optimistic about the future. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, new stories to tell, new relationships to forge, and new adventures waiting to unfold. The world was vast and full of possibilities, and I was eager to explore it all. This was my story, and I was finally the author of my own life.